You're at your old trusty boat. You call mighty sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast. I'm your host, Jerome Rand. Welcome, everybody, to the show. Today, we are going to be continuing on the sort of saga, I suppose, of the onboard recordings from this past trip. And this is post Knockdown gale. And essentially, it's about a day or two after the seas had subsided. The plans were still to try to make it to Bermuda. Eventually, that would fall through as well. But yeah, you can definitely. It's sort of a retelling from the closest point from in time from the actual event occurring, and yeah, it's kind of crazy. You can definitely tell I'm pretty excited to just be out of the danger and all that sort of stuff, and it's nice. I'm glad I did that because it's good to be able to have a pretty good official record, I suppose. So, the memory has a way of warping some of these sort of events, and luckily I definitely have a good record here, and because you don't want to confuse things. But as I always say, if you want to support the show like so many of you do, and I thank you all so much, you can follow the link to the Patreon page and become part of the Patreon family, which helps keep this an ad-free sort of podcast and sort of keeps things going. Also, if you want to reach out to the show, you can head over to sailingintooblivion.com and just click on the podcast link and contact the show and email me directly. Other than that, we did put out the new line of shirts, the Sailing into Oblivion One Wave, which has a pretty cool image on the back of pretty gnarly breaking wave. It was during one of the weather systems I went through, but yeah, you can pick that one up, and the link will be in the description. Other than that, without further ado, back to Jerome out on the ocean. Hey, everybody. Welcome to some offshore gold, the Storm podcast. It is the 22nd of November. I've been out since the 14th, so that gives me 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Day 9 out at sea. And it's a beauty out there now, which is very, very welcome after the last couple of days. Actually, since the whole thing started. We left in good conditions, and then the following day we were becalmed, and then we had a near gale from the east, which turned into a near gale from the southwest, and then not long after that another near gale, and then the fourth one was, as Robin Knox Johnson would say, Sir Robin Knox Johnson would say, a real bastard. So I was basically in position trying to get past the Gulf Stream, and the forecast looked good for it. It looked like I'd be able to cross ahead of the approaching low pressure system and all that, and it's almost like a cliche sort of storm story beginning, I suppose, because it's happened to plenty of people, or I think it has. I mean, I've read enough stories about it, but it was forecast to blow 30, and but it was blowing from the west northwest, and then the southwest, and then to the northwest. Either way, it was coming from the west, so at least I had that going for me, right? Now, the Gulf Stream is obviously a super treacherous place because you get the wind against the Gulf Stream, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. And I've been very fortunate to cross the stream, I don't know how many times, but it's typically been in very, very fair weather. Only once or twice has it been rough, and I was able to survive, and it was all good. no huge crazy deal. This time was a little different. I essentially I had Sparrow and I had sailed down, and the winds got really fickle after the third near gale. It sort of got a little up and down, and I was like, man, we've got to make it across the stream. I want to get away from that thing before this next thing comes in, and the next low pressure system. And so essentially I just gunned for it, and it just was hard. I mean, the winds were up and down. I had to motor a little bit. It was like Murphy's Law. Anything that could have gone wrong to slow progress did. And essentially, I found myself just outside of the Gulf Stream as far as my little weather downloads were telling me. And I was just outside of it. There were a couple of eddies around on the south side of the current, but nothing too crazy. And I sort of thought, okay, well, I'll get past it, and then I'm going to hove to, and I'll just wait it out, and then I'll keep going south. But it was going to be the first forecast that I was looking at, it was going to be like 12 hours or something like that. And I was like, no problem. 12 hours. I can do that. And then as I got closer and closer, and I kept updating the weather, because this is, a crucial point to really know what the heck is going on. It sort of strengthened up a little bit, and then it also extended how long it was going to be. And I sort of thought to myself, well, and this is probably the first mistake, I guess, but I was like, well, I'll tell you what I could probably do is run with this thing kind of on the edge of the stream, or just south of it, where the current's really light and it's all headed to the east with the wind, and then peel off once I get past some of these eddies, and peel off in a direction where there's not much current going on, and just finish out the gale there, and then go. And therein lies the rub. I start just racing downwind, and it's awesome. Friggin' beautiful. Sparrow loves triple reef mainsail, dead downwind, just surfing waves. I have no idea, because I don't have any instruments that give me the max speed that I was doing. But I don't know. I feel like quite possibly, we may have broken my previous record of 20.9 knots. But in any event, before I get too proud of myself, so we're racing, and all day just blasting along, and I'm watching the weather, and I'm looking at it, and I'm dissecting it more than I ever could before, because of the new system that I'm using, and the Iridium Go and all that, which has been phenomenal, by the way. And we're just ripping, and there's squalls coming in, and I got great footage of it and stuff. But it was full on, but it wasn't out of hand by any means. It was nothing that Sparrow and I haven't seen many times before, and we were just juicing it. We were moving so fast and just loving it. Nothing crazy. The waves were all out of the same direction, and yeah, we just kept ripping. And I thought, okay, sweet. So we're gonna do this all day. We're going to do this into the night, and then some point, around midnight or 2 in the morning, I'm going to jibe the boat over, and we're going to start peeling our way to the southeast once we're in a good position. And so that was the game plan. And then there did come a quick little spot where all of a sudden I was like, hey, you know what? I think I can peel out of this thing right now. It looked like there was a good little exit point on the side of a little eddy, and the winds were forecast to basically start coming more out of the northwest, and this would have been in line with this little eddy. And I was like, oh man. And I went and I jibed and was headed that direction. But after a little bit, I sort of thought to myself, because I was more headed on a broad reach instead of a dead downwind run, and the waves were getting a little bigger. And so I sort of thought to myself, geez, if I get sort of pinched, I'm not going to be able to reach safely across this weather. And if I get pushed further and further away, and end up on the other side of this eddy where it's current against the wind, that's going to get really bad. So, you know what? Jibe back. So I jibe back and I continue with my first plan to just head to the spot that I had already picked and safely be able to cut in between these eddies and all that stuff. So I jibe again. And, it's no big deal. Jibing in that sort of condition is, it's not bad. You're talking, the waves at that point, I think, were probably 10 to 15 feet, and it's really nice and windy. And again, the triple reef main on Sparrow is super, super small. But for whatever reason, it just blasts us right along. So it's one of those things where you really want to spot it right on a wave. And if I do it really perfectly, I flick Mongo over, and then all of a sudden I'm just about surfing a wave, and I rip that mainsail over, and then boom, and no pressure, no craziness, no loud bangs or anything like that. Oh, excuse me. In any event, so we get back on track, and we're racing through the night, and it's no big deal. It gets dark, and it's dark, because it's overcast and squalls and rainy and all that sort of stuff. So you can't really barely see anything except for the nav light, which is new. It's an LED, so it's way brighter than the old one. And it kind of actually illuminates the waves a little bit around me. So cruising. And eventually, I'm kind of like, geez, well, I need to get some sleep around here. It's amazing what you get used to as far as being able to sleep during some of these heavy weather sort of conditions, but you get tired enough and you definitely can. And essentially I go down below, I get a little bit of sleep, and then I come back up. Only slept for like an hour, and I'd spent a large amount of time on deck during the day. So I was in the cockpit. Normally I'd just be down below my bunk, but I haven't been out in heavy weather in a while, and it was pretty. And as ugly as most people might think, a gray, stormy day on the sea is, I don't know. I kind of think it's actually pretty remarkable. And so I'm up there and just listening to the waves and watching everything, and we're just surfing, absolutely surfing. And basically get to a point where I go up on deck, and it's nighttime now, and I'm sort of looking around, and I'm like, geez, you know what? I cannot sort of anticipate any of these waves that are coming around me, and they're all still coming from the same direction. So we're just racing straight down them all. But for pretty much the first time that I've ever been on this boat, decided, I can't see anything. It's super dark. It's super windy. The waves are kind of getting big. I'm going to go get my harness and my tether, and I'm going to clip in. And so I do that. And because I just, I thought, take a big one over the side or over the back. I don't want to get washed out of this cockpit like a moron. And so I clip in, and I'm sort of hanging there for a little bit, and it's nice, but you can't see anything, and it's exhilarating, but it's sort of we're really exposed because it was windy and wavy enough that I lashed the Dodger down. So on a West Sail 32, you're pretty exposed when you don't have that Dodger. Even though it's like a false sense of security, it really feels like it feels like being in a tent in the woods as opposed to just cowboy camping under the stars. So I wasn't having all that much fun being up there. Plus it was rainy and stuff. So down below I went, and this was just maybe around like 11 o'clock. And so set the scene. We are ripping along, and I'm down below. We're on a port tack, so the wind's coming over the port side. So I'm in the auxiliary bunk, not my main bunk, because the main bunk is the high side. Auxiliary bunk is just basically the settee or the couch, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just there in full gear, even with the harness and the tether. I got everything, headlamp still on, for crying out loud. And I'm just lying there. I've got a pillow, and I'm just trying to sleep. And we had taken one or two sort of waves on the side, but nothing more than a little bit of noise. It was mostly the rushing exhilaration of surfing these waves and stuff. And again, that's nothing new to Sparrow and I. We've done it for a long time, and I'm just there, and I'm asleep but sort of awake, and without warning, just that, not the impact, but the sound of a very, very large, intense breaking wave touching Sparrow. Like, not a bang, but like a grunt. And I wake up instantly, and then the next thing I know, the whole boat, all I do is I feel the boat going up. And the next thing I know, I just feel everything piling on top of me, like everything. All these books, food, the refrigerator hatch came open, hit the ceiling. I only know that because I'm looking at the big dent in the ceiling from it. All the food came out of there. Eggs, 6 dozen eggs. Imagine. The only flight those chickens will ever see. And all this other stuff it just felt like somebody just dumped an entire boat worth of stuff on top of me in my bunk. And I'm just like, whoa. And the boat doesn't really return up really fast. There isn't like this whole, like, everything gets dumped off of me thing. And I sort of have to push all this stuff. I'm like, ugh, and like claw my way out of this hole that I'm buried in. And I get up, and I walk along the side of the boat to get to the companionway, and which is fully all closed. Everything is like latched down and stuff. And then the boat sort of comes back up as I'm doing that. And I just come out, flip the headlamp, and I'm like, Jesus, damage report. What did we? And I look directly at the mast. The mast is still there. I'm just like, oh, thank God. I look back, and Mongo's still there. And I didn't notice quite 2 seconds, like maybe half a second went by, and I realized the arch that held the solar panels and the aerials for the AIS and the gallows that hold the boom, all that stuff, gone. And I'm like, and then I kind of look over, and I'm like, there's like chunks of the cap rail missing, and stanchions, and the splash guard, all on the starboard side. So not the side that the wave hit, but all inside. And I'm like, Dodger's down too. Oh man, it's all like shredded. And I'm just like, snap into action. I've got my knife on me already. But I'm looking, and I see the solar panels all dragging right in the water, right next to the stern. They're being held on by the lifelines and the wires and all this sort of stuff. And so it's sort of like triage at that moment where I'm sort of thinking, the thought of, I've got to get this stuff back on board, I don't want to lose it, was kicking into my head when the initial thing was like, cut it free. And because it was basically skidding along in the water right next to Mongo's rudder. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, see if I can pull it in. Oh my God, not a freaking chance. We were going so fast. We're still in those conditions. Like, we basically, well, no, I'll get into my analysis after I tell the story. So I'm just like, holy cow. So I'm trying to heave it, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm thinking, well, can I put it on a winch or whatever? But the whole time, I mean, it's literally right next to Sparrow's rudder. And we're talking a big old piece of wood, a bunch of metal piping, 2 big solar panels, and all I could think of was like, save Mongo. And after trying a couple of times to pull it in and get it alongside the boat and try and pull it up, I was like, nope, cut it free, cut it free. So out comes the knife, and I'm like, cut, 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 and I cut all these lines, and then the last thing are these two stupid little pelican hooks for the metal wires, the last of the metal wires that are the gates into the cockpit. And oh man, sorry, the mic is getting thrown around. And I'm able to just get those suckers open, and then boom, it is gone. And then I think there was one more little piece or something like, yeah, there was a tiny little piece of the cap rail that had sort of a secondary little line that was attached to Mongo, but this was like a tiny little piece of wood and was dragging behind. But we were free of that, and then next I'm sort of just like scrambling around, and I go kind of do a big check around. Okay, mast is good, sail's good. Holy smokes! Oh my gosh! And I'm trying to sort of, I'm in a little bit panic mode, and I poke my head down below, and it's literally just a pile, an absolute pile. The floor is just littered with broken food, spaghetti sauce, eggs, and just all the books and all the bedding, and the 50-gallon water bladder had broken free. And that was sort of like, I was like, oh my God, I don't even, incredible, holy cow. And I'm sort of like trying to, at that point, I don't know, I was trying to figure out, again, it's like triage of like, well, what do I worry about down below, and what do I worry about up above? And it was sort of like, I came down and threw a couple of things around because I wanted to check the bilge, and then just see if any water was coming in. And then I also wanted to sort of somehow secure that 50-gallon water bladder. But again, sort of it clicks into your head where you're just like, no, 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 let's go sail the boat. Let's make sure everything's going okay there. And so I go back up top, and I'm thinking to myself, geez, like, okay, that was some random big wave that came pretty much from the north, because I was headed east. So I've got to be able to peel a little further downwind to be able to get away from that. And eventually I would at some point jibe. My memory literally, I'd have to look at the videos that I took, because this whole time I was like, the voice of my dad sort of came into my head, because he's always like, did you take any footage of that? And luckily I had that little GoPro in my pocket, and just kept doing these quick little like 1 minute, like, oh my gosh, we just got knocked down, and I'm looking, I'm like, look at all this inside, this is so crazy, quick update, more to come, plunk, and that was it. And then I move on. But so started sort of trying to peel Sparrow off, and eventually decide to jibe, because it's just about midnight or so. Jibe the boat, because I was at the point where I wanted to actually start heading to the southeast. And I was like, well, if the waves are coming from the north as well as the east, yes, boom, let's go. We're in the good position. We can go right in between these eddies, and we're flying. You know, probably just, I got hit by the one random wave. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, yeah, we got pummeled. We knew it was going to happen, and it's, you know, it's one of those things. Like, I've always thought about that, out sailing on the seas, you know, when I'm in these sort of storms and stuff. You see giant waves break, and when I say break, like breaking in front of the wave. So instead of normal waves out at sea, basically they'll break and then fall behind themselves. But when things get really bad and super windy and there's currents involved, when they break in front, like a wave breaking on the shore, so to speak. But in any event, so I go ahead and I jibe, and now we're running more in what I consider to be a safer zone. And so it's like down below and start trying to like get things sorted out. First thing I do is get sort of the bedding and the table and all that like piled back on that side. And I get the water bladder, and I'm just like, oh, I was like, I don't even want to deal with this. I've got two big water tanks that are full. Like, you know what? And I like heave this thing. It's probably got 35, 40 gallons in it, so it's heavy. and I kind of slide it and heave it over all this. Luckily, there's so many eggs broken on the floor that sort of slid over easily. It greased them up over towards the hatch that goes right into the bilge. Get it over that and just cut the corner of it and just boom straight into the bilge. Empty it all in there. Just that way, I don't have this massive, heavy, moving object in the boat, which is always kind of terrifying. So, as soon as I do that, I also realize that there's quite a bit of water, because when you get flipped as far over as I did, all the water comes out of the head, all the water comes out of the sink. Luckily, none of the portholes broke, so there wasn't like an emergency there. I know when Randall Reeves was knocked down on his first attempt of the figure eight, I believe it was a porthole that broke, and that was his sort of nightmare situation on that. So luckily we didn't have to deal with any of that, and so it was just like boom. So I grabbed the little handle and go up and I pump the 50 or so gallons of water that's in the bilge out of the bilge. But I do it with the hand pump instead of the actual other one because I have to save my batteries because it's not been super sunny out for the day, and I wasn't really able to run the engine because it was so rough. I don't really like to do that. But I figured, you know what? As soon as this thing's done, man, oh, it's going to be sunny and I'll be able to run the engine. We'll charge all the batteries up. It'll be great. So the batteries are at like 12.3. So I don't want to use that juice because I realize now that I don't have any solar, I am going to be totally relying on that engine. And if I can't get it started, I'm going to be back in the Stone Age, so to speak, which is fine, but I would rather not. Might want to, honestly, I swear, one of the things I thought was, if I don't have electricity, I can't do the podcast. Oh, it's just so crazy. That's the commitment I have for this show, people. I hope you realize. So in any event, so now we're just racing. I'm just trying to make it through the night. I'm up, and I'm as soon as the boat's sailing again. Okay, because again, it's not like it's blowing 60 out. It's blowing about 28 to 30 something, gusting to more. And yeah, it's not crazy hectic, and we're going with the current, and so it's just not. It was just a random crazy wave. So, but now we're in this sort of situation where there is a lot to do, and there's still kind of a lot going on. But I've been living in this sort of near gale to gale force world for a week now, and so I'm able to go around and I'm just like slinging all the food that I think is still going to be okay, getting that back in the fridge. Like there's egg yolk and stuff flying everywhere. Trying to mop all this stuff up with paper towels and all this stuff. And luckily I have a lot of paper towels. So I'm going and I'm cleaning, I'm trying, and like, all these books are completely saturated in spaghetti sauce and all stuff. So I get some garbage bags out and I'm like loading up the things that I know are just going to be garbage, and then I'm trying to get the food in here and this and there, and I'm finding like eggs and things like that everywhere on the boat, broken, whatever, like shells. There's still a ton everywhere, but you can't clean the boat up all in one day. So I'm just trying to get things sort of back to normal, and then I'll go back up. I'll do that for 10 minutes, then I'll go back up and just see how things are going. Everything seems to be okay. All right, now let's go. Next project. Let's go back down and go and check up forward. That looks pretty disheveled, but okay, not much. I had a lot of sails stuffed in up there, so not much could really move, so to speak, which was nice. And obviously the food didn't get up there. Checking the engine room. That looks okay. The batteries, everything stayed where they were. They're not lashed down, but kind of bolted into position really well. So those stayed where they were. There's a little box with, antifreeze and oil and distilled water and things like that. That all got emptied and just bounced all over the place. But for lack of a better word, engine room looks good. And go back, and it's more of like trying to restow all the stuff. I mean, there was like a bottle of vodka and a bottle of Mount Gay rum that were just ice skating all around this sloppy, slippery cabin sole, and because the boat's like rolling a lot as we race downwind, and it's just an incredible scene. I can't wait to look at some of the footage just to see if it makes any sense at all. Hopefully it does, but in any event, we go through the rest of the night, and I'm up, adrenaline's running, and I'm pretty much I try and get a semblance of organization and get the floor so it's no longer slippery and slick, and sort of then I get the bed put back together, and then essentially like down below, it looks reasonable. The lee board that I had snapped in half. I think the water bladder hit that on its way to tumbling down towards me. I've found already there was an alternator, a spare alternator that was locked in a compartment down below my normal bunk, the bunk that is on the side where the wave hit, and it had made its way out of that little tiny, and there's it's like the tiniest little hatch to get into this thing underneath all this stuff, flung out of there, and somehow ended up underneath the bunk that I was sleeping on. Oddly enough, I don't know how that's possible, but in any event, so we're sailing and we're sailing, and I'm just like, man, I hope we don't get hit by another one of those. I'm kind of freaked out and all that stuff, as I would think anybody would think. Mm. And for the rest of the night, we're good. We don't get any more big hits or anything like that. We've jibed. We're headed in the direction that seems to be safe. It's still blowing, and it's starting to blow a little harder. Um, Steady up into the 30s, like 30, probably up to about 33, 34. So gale force definitely, but normally probably right around 30, and then gusting. But every once in a while it just would punch for like an hour or two, and we're good. And then finally the light comes, and I'm just, oh, thank God, I can finally see. Like this all happens just before midnight, and then it finally became sort of light around 5 something, and because I haven't switched any of the clocks or anything like that, I've just been dealing with it because I'm pretty far east. I'm past 60 degrees west, so essentially the light comes and I'm just like, oh, thank God. And the waves, they've definitely heaped up. They're a little bit bigger, but it's nothing crazy. Maybe they're in the 15 with a random 20-footer. Like the swell sort of has heaped up, but the actual breakers, it's no big deal. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, sweet, we made it. We made it through the night. We've got a full day of this. It's going to calm down and peter out by the end of the day, and be back down to like 15 knots or something. And the further south I get, the sooner that's going to happen. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep going. And I keep checking all the forecast and the files on the Gulf Stream and all the currents and stuff. And it looks like I'm in this like awesome slot in between. Basically to the east of me, there is a bit of current that's like stronger current that's running to the southeast that I want to be in. I couldn't quite get to it because the waves wouldn't really allow. I didn't want to take any more big hits on the port side, and the counter current that's off to the other direction, to the southwest of us, I guess. So I'm in this corridor of essentially what appears to be zero current or very little current. And as the day goes on, we get to about 7, 8, maybe 9 in the morning, and that's when I first start to see the giants. Essentially, I'm seeing swell that are up well above 20 feet, and I'm looking at them kind of like, whoa, that was a cut. Like there would be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and then it's back down to 15 footers, But then there will be like another big set of them, and not long after I start seeing that, and these waves, they're breaking, but they're again breaking and then falling down the backside of them. So I'm sort of thinking, wow, like, geez, some of these are pretty big. This is, holy smokes. I'm getting a little concerned. Let's just say that. And then another hour goes by. And that's when I first start to see the big breakers. And to picture a big gray ocean, overcast sky. It's windy, it's blowing. There's streaky sort of not foam, but there's streaks, white streaks on the surface of the water, and I'm seeing these big lumbering swell come in, and at certain point I start to see that the swell are coming in from the north and they're coming in from the east. So I've got these mixed match, these two sets of waves coming in, and I'm going to the southeast, so I'm just divide them right down the middle and take them equally on either quarter, so to speak. And see the first couple of these big breakers, right? And essentially the only way I can make sense of it to as far as describing it, it looks as though on top of a 20 or 25 foot swell, and it's only estimates. Maybe my brain was so rattled. These are like 15-foot swell, but I'm pretty darn sure they were bigger. The swell size wasn't what I was worried about. It was the fact that the breaking section of these waves were as big as school buses, tumbling for 10 seconds or more, just and I'm just looking at these like, holy cow, like if one of those hit me, that easily would be able to pick me up, flip me over, do whatever it wanted to. I mean, these breaking sections of these waves are actually bigger than Sparrow, much bigger. And I'm looking at them and I see them and I'm just like, holy cow. And I see the first couple and my adrenaline just spikes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that's just a random, like one off and I've only seen, that's it. Sweet, we're good. Never see it again. Tell the story to my grandchildren, blah, blah, blah. Not so, unfortunately. As the minutes actually from the first sighting went by, it started to become very obvious to me that I was seeing the direct result of wind against current and a mismatched sea state. And basically, I'm now entered the corridor from hell. What I thought was going to be like the slot that would get me out of here turned into the corridor from hell. And I'm looking at these waves and I'm seeing some that are literally breaking over the top of the other one, breaking from the other direction, and all just coming together in this massive, massive wall of white tumbling water. And it's so loud and it's windy. And I'm standing in the companionway. So I've got my slats in, my hatchboards or my washboards are in. Just got the sliding top open, and I'm standing there and I'm just watching this, and I'm looking at. I pretty much was like, wow, this is it. This is how it ends. Uh, there's nothing I can do about this, and I said it out loud. I was like, the dice have been thrown. uh, let's see what happens. I guess. It just I if I were to be directly hit by one of those breaking waves, there's nothing we could have done. I don't care what I would have had dragging behind this boat. I don't care what position this boat was in, hove to, running into it, or heading into it. These waves are monsters, and they are going to grab this boat and basically tumble it like it was a bath toy out on the beach. It was remarkable. And who knows? Maybe again, my sleep deprived brain was, exaggerating all this. I don't know, but I had basically accepted my fate. And one of the first things I said after seeing enough of these waves and a couple of closer call waves where they were getting, it was like, holy cow, that just broke like right next to the boat. Super scary. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to die, if I'm going to go down today, I'm going down with a beer in my hand. So I went and just grabbed one of the filthy, egg yolk covered Busch Lights and stood at my position there. And I slowly sipped on this beer and I watched in absolute awe, in terror, in acceptance. That's the only thing I can really say is that part of me was like, oh, I should be on the helm and I'll be able to. And then I thought to myself, no, you can't move fast enough to avoid these things. There's no way. You're done. I mean, when these swell would start to come up, we were actually getting sort of shaded from the wind. So Sparrow would lose its ability to be able to just sort of surf away on these big things. And I thought I was like, dude, there's just no way. I'm leaving it up to the gods. Let's see what happens. Like I said, the dice have been rolled, and we're waiting on the outcome. And for about 2.5 to 3 hours, this went on, and I stood there and I watched. And the only time I came down below was to hide from, splashing when waves would break right up next to us and things like that, like smaller waves. And lucky enough, all those hours and seeing, I don't know, hundreds of these, well, not hundreds, probably, I'll bet you there were at least 100 giant breakers that would have been game enders for Sparrow and I. Uh, Watching about 100 of those, eventually it finally started to peter out, and I no longer saw these things coming in these big sets. And every once in a while during those 3 hours, it would there'd be like a lull almost, and then another squall would come in, and I'd think, oh, okay, because with these sort of conditions, I've seen it before on a smaller scale where the current disrupts the water, but there's like a definitive line. Like I remember sailing up the coast of Brazil, and just you'd all of a sudden the whole sea is like erupted into these like little tiny like crazy splashing waves, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone again, and it's just some little rip current thing. In any event, I'm sort of thinking every time it sort of lulls out and I don't see any more of these big breakers anywhere off in the distance, I'm like, holy cow, did we make it? But I won't even say it out loud because I don't want to jinx myself. And then I'd start to see the big boys come in again. And I'd be like, nope, that's it. We are. No, now I did it. Just thinking it. I was like, don't even think that you might be out of this. No way. Don't even think it. And, but then eventually, yeah, about 3 hours. So it probably would have been sometime around like noonish or somewhere around there. It finally stopped doing that and just became a normal sort of ugly ocean as far as, pretty big waves, big swell, but none of these giant breaking things. And these beasts, I used to call them lumberjacks because they basically like to turn you over and chop your mast off. So, yeah, we get to that point, and finally I'm sort of like, okay, and I had dashed off a very quick text message to my mom for her daily update, and I just said, hey, wild night. I'll give you a report later. It's raining a lot here. Just as like an excuse, because I didn't know what to really say. I didn't want to worry her, and but at the same time, I wanted them, I guess, to have like a current position for me if all hell broke loose and we just got rolled and I end up in the life raft or whatever. That was the other thing I forgot to mention. After seeing these lumberjacks riding these waves, I essentially, for the first time ever, I pulled the emergency grab bag down from its little perch that has the EPIRB and everything on it, and I grabbed a gallon jug of water and basically set those down at the bottom of the companionway stairs, basically so that if it happened, I'd hopefully be able to grab that deploy the life raft and do it all very, very quickly. So that was the first. Two firsts, wearing a tether and a harness, and then having my evacuation kit ready to go at the bottom of the stairs. Wow. It's amazing to even say that, but after all the miles, all the ocean, all the Southern Ocean stuff. So yeah, it sort of starts to calm down, and I know I'm sort of okay, I'm good. So I then dash off a text and say, hey, I had a severe knockdown, well over 90 degrees, did some damage, lost the solar panels, lost the gallows, lost the Dodger. Probably gonna have to head to some port for repairs, but I'm okay, and Sparrow's still sailing. Done. And then I just sort of put that down. I had to reply because I didn't want her to worry more, but because it wasn't, this is not a time where I want to sit there be looking at my device trying to chat with somebody. I want to be still paying attention what the heck's going on outside. And it finally starts to calm down. The winds follow the forecast perfectly. They start to calm down, and or as far as calming down, and instead of how strong they actually were. And then finally I can go and make some phone calls, and I call some people on the sat phone, let them know what happened, let them know I'm okay. Talk to my mom. That was always really hard. I've had to do that once before. When I did the on the last voyage, when the bowsprit started to have issues and all that sort of stuff, it's hard. I remember calling and like getting that big lump in my throat and stuff, and the same thing happened on this time. Not so bad because I tried to sort of I don't know, summon the excitement of the moment and everything like that. Because the adrenaline was still pretty well pumping through me, but it would very quickly, rapidly run out. So dash those off. Now it's essentially, let's try and clean this boat up some more. I had made some makeshift stuff so that Mongo and everything could function well up on top, but I'm still just triple reef main. I'm just running with the wind, and I'm pretty tired at this point. And I get sort of everything situated down below, and yeah, I had to eventually. I sit down, and I think I have a sundowner, quick one, and then straight into the bunk to sleep. I mean, I was pretty exhausted, just from I think the stress and the adrenaline leaving my body, sort of thing. But I no longer have a lee board, and we're still rolling just a little bit, not much, because the seas have not subsided, but we're going with them. I don't know. It just wasn't too bad, and so I'm in the bunk, and I try and like situate myself a little bit so that I'm not gonna roll out or anything like that. And unbeknownst to me, some point in the middle of the night, I had rolled over onto my back, and Sparrow rolled and threw me right onto the cabin sole, like with a thunk. Like I'm dead asleep, and I don't wake up until I hit the cabin sole. And I'm like, ugh, what the heck? Oh! But oddly enough, I was asleep, so I didn't tense up, and my elbow hurts a little bit, but for being dropped 2.5 feet straight onto hard wood, I don't know. As an old guy, I took it pretty well. But I was so confused on what was going on, where I was, what I was doing. It took a good while to figure out, what the heck my situation was at that point, and then before I could actually just head back to the bunk to go and sleep more. And then I slept for the rest of that night. No AIS, nothing. Just thanking, again, rolling the dice, hoping that nobody runs me over or anything like that. But by dawn, I actually got up and I did see a ship. There was a ship. It wasn't too close to me, but I was able to do a radio check, VHF check with them, and thankfully they returned my little call, and that was it. And so now the rest of this day we've got it's been beautiful, freaking beautiful. And I tell you, that's the one thing. That's the one thing that kind of irks me, I guess. But is that if that one wave wouldn't have hit this boat, that one out of the million or whatever that I saw, not just the big ones, but all the waves over however long, I'd be sitting here on this podcast telling you this story about this how gnarly it was and holy cow, these waves were big and all that sort of stuff. But I would still be continuing this voyage out into the Atlantic, and now I'm actually I got to head to land. I got to go to Bermuda uh, if the weather allows. If not, I'll head down to the Caribbean first. But I essentially need a GPS aerial that I can hook into my AIS so that I can get that broadcasting again, and then hopefully pick up at least one solar panel. I don't know where I would mount it. Probably some little side mount jobby or something. But I need solar to be able to power some of this stuff and keep the batteries going because I'm hoping to continue this voyage off into the Atlantic and then down into the South Atlantic. So, part of me thinks though it may be smarter to get down to like the BVI and haul the boat out and do a real thorough inspection. But I'm gonna look around, really try and peel through, check where the bulkheads are connected, all that sort of stuff, just to see if there's any noticeable damage. And if not, then maybe it was just a big hit and Sparrow can just take it and shuck it right off. I'm also probably gonna consult with an expert. I'm probably gonna try and talk to Randall Reeves and see what his thoughts are on it. But yeah, other than that, go to Bermuda, get those two things, get the heck out of there, and continue on, or end up down in the BVI and haul the boat out and be there for a month. Who knows? We'll sort of see. But it's beautiful out here today. I had a nice sail. The winds are going to die off a little bit. That will allow me to disconnect some of these random wires that are connected to my batteries from from all these solar panels that are no longer there. And because you just don't want wires connected to your battery that just are terminating into nothing. You never know when that weird coincidence of the two ends coming together will happen. But yeah, some other stuff to fix and clean and all that. There's a million things to do, and I'm just gonna putter my way through them. But yeah, thankfully the engine's going. Thankfully Sparrow held up to the abuse, and hopefully, no, I'm not gonna say it because I know that'll jinx me because I definitely said it the other night. But yeah, oh, now I'm stuck on it because I don't want people to wonder what I was about to say, but I think yeah, I think everybody could understand what I was probably just about to say. It's when you don't want to say the thing where you're like, I hope da 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 da. I'm not gonna say that. So yeah, we'll go. More updates coming and everything. Hopefully you enjoyed that story. What an insane time, and like right now, it's only 11:30. I'm gonna take a nap here pretty soon, and I'm looking forward to that. It's beautiful out. I'm so thankful to be alive, and I'm just so happy. I'm over the moon, no matter what the destruction, how much it's gonna cost to deal with all this sort of stuff. I am a happy man, and I've got this great new story, and I can't wait to look at the footage. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks for listening, and till the next one.